When will prices go back down? It is obvious that everything is more expensive than it used to be, from groceries and gas to plane tickets and rent, and many Americans are left wondering when pricing will return to normal. The short answer is that several factors, like post-pandemic consumer demand, persistent supply chain shortages, geopolitical developments, and the conflict in Ukraine, that influence today's record-high inflation, and there are varying opinions on how most of these elements will develop. Inflation currently stands at 9.1%, according to the most recent Consumer Price Index (CPI) report, which is too high for prices to keep climbing. Even though there is currently no information on what the future month reports will reveal, there are encouraging signals throughout the economy that show the nation is averting a recession and that inflation is beginning to slow. The last month's downturn, caused mainly by the drop in fuel prices, is a big step in the right direction. The bad news is that high prices for many products and services are probably here to stay for a while, even though the United States is still far from the Federal Reserve's target of 2% annual inflation over time. What exactly is the Fed doing about the rising inflation? Although the Fed is working aggressively to control inflation, this doesn't always guarantee that prices will fall quickly or go back to what they were before pre-pandemic levels. It simply means that prices will level off and increase more gradually as a whole instead of continuing to rise rapidly. That's how the Fed's policy works. Instead of cutting prices, the central bank is attempting to slow and stabilize its rising rate. Fed officials aim for a low inflation rate, partly because the central bank is concerned about deflation or declining prices, which might hinder economic growth. Consumers may reduce spending if prices fall because they anticipate further cost reductions. Spending less may result in a slowdown in hiring and business investment, resulting in additional job losses and a halt to wage increases. Instead, Americans would be better able to plan and make more wise financial decisions if they could anticipate stable price increases of roughly 2%. However, just because costs as a whole will keep going up doesn't mean that everything will always be this pricey. As a result of the pandemic's dramatic rise in demand, prices for many products rose substantially. However, experts predict that some product categories will eventually experience price drops. Will prices go back to where they were in a pre-pandemic sense? Probably not, said Michael Gapen, the head of U.S. economics at Bank of America. But is there room for some prices to fall fairly dramatically in the direction of where they were in the pre-pandemic era? I think the answer to that is yes. Goods that soared in price could see reversals. But before we continue, go ahead and click the subscribe and like buttons. It takes a lot to make these videos. Your small actions tell YouTube to keep promoting our videos. Thanks. Now back to the video. During the pandemic, demand for commodities increased as people spent their accumulated money on new couches and work-from-home supplies. According to economists, when inflation slows and people spend more on services than on products, the price of some items may decrease. According to experts, the U.S. will experience a painful period of higher costs for some time, as considerable price decreases for many things are still months or years away. As demand declines and supply constraints loosen, according to Wendy Edelber, director of the Hamilton Project at the Brookings Institution, costs will drop for various products, including exercise bikes and small appliances. Large stores like Walmart and Target have already announced that they will offer products at a discount to clear off their excess inventory. Used car prices, which decreased slightly in July but remained 6.6% higher than a year earlier, should reduce when supply chain disruptions subside, according to Laura Rossner Warburton, a senior economist at Macropolicy Perspectives LLC. During the pandemic, automakers have had difficulty obtaining essential components like microprocessor chips, which has slowed manufacturing and raised pricing. In comparison to other items, food and gas costs are more likely to decline since they are more volatile. Because of a drop in oil prices in recent weeks as investors grow increasingly concerned about a potential recession, retail gas prices have decreased. But the price of food increased in July, up 1.1% over June. Food and fuel are two of the more volatile components in the inflation basket. They may go up and they may go down, said Joe Bruce Willis, the chief economist at RSM US. You may see fuel back in the $2.50 range. Rosner Warburton stated that after seeing a significant boom earlier this year, airline fares will probably continue to fall. As of July, airline fares were down 7.8% over the previous month. Prices should decline further when demand declines in the summer and fewer people travel, but they could still be higher than pre-pandemic levels due to greater labor and gasoline costs. Services are more likely to keep increasing. According to James Knightley, the head international economist at Ing Economics, it's unlikely that many services will see significant price decreases, mainly because businesses are currently paying more for labor and employees often don't see salary cutbacks. Businesses find it more expensive to run as labor expenses rise, which forces them to pass part of those cost increases on to customers. Employers don't like doing it, Knightley said. The relationship with your workers is hurt very badly, so actual wage cuts, you only tend to see that in extreme circumstances. While grocery store purchases may become more affordable, Robert Dent, a senior U.S. economist at Nomura Securities, predicts that restaurant meals will likely become more expensive, albeit more gradually than they are now. Businesses currently deal with higher labor costs during the pandemic recovery. Rent is not likely to decrease in price. According to Omer Sharif, the founder of the research firm Inflation Insights, rent prices usually don't experience outright price drops outside a severe economic downturn, even though future rent growth will likely be slower than it is currently. With an increase of 0.7% over June, rent rates climbed further in July. Given the rarity of price cuts in the overall cost of medical care, Sharif predicted that prices for hospital and physician services would likely continue to rise, and items like clothing and alcoholic beverages, which haven't experienced significant price increases throughout the pandemic, don't have much room to drop. It's not a matter of if prices will fall, but rather when and how much. There are numerous reasons to be optimistic regarding commodities, housing, and the products industry, but there are still too many unknowns to make firm predictions. Relief does seem to be in sight, but it won't arrive until the end of the year at the earliest. Consumers are tightening their belts till that time. After the pandemic, many people found themselves in difficult financial situations, and the biggest inflation in 40 years only made things worse.